So thanks everyone for joining us, and I hope you can hear us all well. Who have we got? Excellent stuff. It's obviously been a rather bizarre week, and I'm sure everyone's focus is somewhat distracted with the terrible events going on around the world. Obviously, we are very much aware of this and have no intention of ignoring or trying to put it to one side, but at the same time we felt it was important to push on with life as normal as well. We will be making some efforts on the site to reach out and make some support for the international situation, which we'll talk about shortly. But obviously in this case it's really a question of just making sure we carried on with business as usual in as much as we can do. Matt, good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, yeah, I'm here. Hi everyone.
Hi, Matt. Great that you were now able to join.
Yeah,
so now we can start to get the ball rolling. Definitely want to also mention what Rory just said about the horrible situation going on within the world, that all our thoughts are with the people of Ukraine. So definitely absolutely horrible situation going on. So just to quickly introduce myself. So my name is Vlad. I am the crypto community manager here at Sedition. And I'd like to quickly give, first Rory and then Matt the opportunities to introduce themselves, and then, of course, the firms. So maybe, Rory, if you could just go first, introduce yourself and Sedition.
My name is Rory Blain. I'm the director of Sedition. My background is very much part of the arts, and for pretty much my whole life. I started my life out as a dancer and a performing artist, and have been involved in literature, performing arts, before moving full-time into the contemporary art world, the visual fine arts, and working in a bricks and mortar gallery. The last 10 or 12 years have been taken up with Sedition, which is a move into a non-bricks and mortar gallery. It's very much an online virtual art experience, but it's still a continuation of my lifelong passion for the arts. Sedition was founded 11 years ago now. We set up in 2011 with very much the idea of democratizing the art world to some extent, removing the barriers to entry, making sure that the entire world, regardless of how deep your pockets are, should be able to access and enjoy works from the best creators of our generation. That's really what Sedition is about. Thank you, Vlad.
Yes, thank you so much, Rory. And Matt, if you could just introduce yourself and Universal Everything.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Hi. Thanks, Vlad. Hi, everyone. It's good to be talking on this. It's the first time I've been involved in Twitter Spaces, so it's good to see this new platform's taking off. So, my name's Matt Pyke. I'm the founder and creative director of Universal Everything, which started off in 2004 with just me, but now it's sort of grown into an arts and design collective. So we do, I'd say, 50-60% of our work is in the fine art space for museum shows, collectible artworks such as for Sedition, some NFT stuff, and then some traditional sales to collectors of physical hardware and screens and things like that as well. And then the other half of the studio, we do a lot of collaborations with super interesting brands. We've worked a lot with Apple on R&D projects, exploring all sorts of top secret things I can't mention, and companies like Hyundai in South Korea. So we're primarily video art and interactive art. That's our main output as a studio, and most of the work we make explores this idea of a combination of figurative works, abstraction, and using emerging technology. So it's finding out new ways of representing and exploring the sort of soulfulness of human forms and human movement and animal forms and movement, using emerging technologies, which means things like infrared body tracking, LiDAR cameras, visual effects software, bespoke custom generative code software, and things like that. So that's kind of our brush.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
All right.
And yeah, now let's just soon start up with the questions. But before we go, I just like to mention to everyone that we want to make this as interactive of experience as possible. So if you have any questions live at any time, please just request the microphone. There should be an option here on Twitter Spaces to request to speak, and I will bring you to be a speaker. So feel free to do that. But yeah, now let's go forward with the questions. And Rory, if you could maybe tell about what kind of art can one find on Sedition, if you could just reflect
Of
a bit
course.
about that. Mhm.
Hopefully, a very, very broad church is the answer to that. Sedition obviously is an online platform, so the key common factor to the artworks you'll find on Sedition is the fact that they are not physical in nature. These are artworks that were crafted and designed for screens and devices, projectors and holograms and technology, basically. So it's not something you're going to walk in and find a canvas and a mixture of pigments and things spread over the canvas. That said, the range of art available there should and is a reflection of the landscape for contemporary art as a whole. Sedition's technology is very much by design slightly limited at the moment. This is a very deliberate choice. We are presenting artworks that derive from far more complex processes like augmented reality and virtual reality and artificial intelligence and generative works and all these sorts of technological developments. But due to the complexities and the cost of being able to put those into each individual person's vault or inbox, at the moment, what we're showing is simply a video file or a still of an artwork that was derived from those processes. So it's a lot more simple than the complexity that underpins it in many ways. But that said, there's the vast range on there. Photography, stills, video work, there are sound files on there. There are files on there that you can use as an artifact, a digital artifact, but you can also then book the artist for performance through that work as well. So you've literally got everything from performance art to video work to still photography to paintings and everything in between, albeit presented in digital media.
Awesome. Much appreciated, Rory. And I already see that we have the first person coming in to become a speaker. So that's great. Great to see engagement. So, Michael, would you like to ask your question now?
Hi, thank you, and welcome. Nice to see, hear Rory and see the people like Terry Flaxton, whose works I've collected and admire, joining in. I just had a silly question, really. Why are your Matt Pyke's works, Universal Everything works, listed under Trippy Everything rather than Universal Everything on the Sedition site?
Are they? They shouldn't be.
I was just looking to see
right now to check this.
It might be another artist, I think. Now I'm not sure if that's us.
There is.
I've just been through my vault tonight.
Everything on the site, but that certainly shouldn't be appearing on anything that is universal. That's interesting.
So how do you?
So if I go through my vault and look for the stuff that I have from Universal Everything, nothing comes up in the alphabetical list, and I just tried to be through. I mean, there's over 300 works, and I can't find anything under Universal Everything. Just was confused.
Well, doing a search on the site or a search in your vault, Michael?
I was doing a search in my vault because I know I have some Universal Everything.
Okay, there's a bit of a disconnect there somewhere. At the moment, we don't offer a search function within the vault, so it has to search across the site, although that is a feature that's planned and will be offered shortly. But if there's anything coming up from Trippy Everything, who is an artist on the site, that certainly shouldn't be associated with Universal Everything. They're completely separate, but I'll have the text investigate this to make sure that's not happening.
Yeah. I've just checked my vault because I've collected a few works and our studio name is appearing correctly here. So Maybe
Okay.
it's just something something that Rory and his colleagues can fix.
Rest assured, Michael, I'll double check that for you. And make
Okay,
sure.
well, I'm glad to see I've still got lots of Terry Flax and stuff coming up, but I will. I've maybe done a wrong search or something. Anyway, thanks very much, and yeah, I mean, I just find it so exciting. The just having such a wide variety of original stuff, but without taking up vast amount of space, and I don't have the wall space anymore to have this and just be able to do it on one's TV or on a screen. It's amazing. It's fantastic.
Michael, as long as we've got Matt here, I have to ask if it's not putting you on the spot too much. Do you have a preference? What's your preferred Universal Everything work?
I like the Michelin Men.
Yes, the Transfiguration.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, great.
Just amazing. Absolutely. It's just the way they move is so trippy.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
thanks. No, well done, and I'll shut up now. Let others speak.
No, thank you. Much appreciated. Thanks, Michael.
Yes, thank you for your question, Michael. All right, so I would like to address the next question to Matt. So this actually question that comes from one of our own. It is from our designer here at Sedition.
Yeah.
Hi, Matt. I'm a big fan. I have a geek question. What hardware and software do you use? I'm interested in workstation specs, 3D software, render engines, particle plugins, etc.
Okay, no, good question. So firstly, I'd like to point out that I act as an artist as more of a director. So I never have and never plan to do any generative coding myself or any visual effects or 3D animation myself. I work with supremely talented people in collaboration to achieve these kind of dreams that I have in my head. Yeah. So in terms of the tech specs, I know sat here in my studio, earlier I was mentioning about emerging technologies. So one half of the studio's output is in visual effects, so 3D animated video artworks. So we work with Houdini primarily, which is basically the visual effects software that is used by Hollywood when you see skyscrapers collapsing or dragons or clouds or anything highly realistic and highly complex. It's using Houdini, and we kind of subvert the use of Houdini and use the tools that Hollywood use to create more abstract, less commercialized animation and imagery. In terms of hardware, we're always trying to sort of find the most advanced tools, the most advanced paint brushes, as you will. So we're using the absolute fastest graphics cards you can get at the moment, which are NVIDIA 3090 cards that are very hard to acquire because of all the Bitcoin miners using them. But we've got a few of those, so we can both do highly complex, high resolution renders, and also the other side of the studio is real time and interactive using Unity mostly. So that allows us to create generative works that, thanks to the latest graphics cards, are highly realistic as well. So we can create believable but ever evolving generative video works. So those are the primary tools we use, is a mixture of Houdini and Unity. And then my tools are a very nice fountain pen I bought in WH Smith's at an airport with a gift token I had off a family member. And my favorite thing is buying reams of A4 printer paper. That's literally all I spend my time doing, is drawing on A4 paper and then meeting up with supremely talented colleagues and bringing things to life.
Thank you so much, Matt. It's really awesome and interesting to hear the reflections about how the art is created.
Yeah.
Now we have another person, HB, who I've just invited as a speaker. So would you like to ask your question, and do specify who you're addressing it to, of course?
Yeah. Hi there. Thank you for letting me raise my question, and thanks Rory and the others for hosting this. I've been collecting Universal art or following it via Sedition for a while, since the beginning actually, and since then as well I see a lot of other things you do, and I was wondering how important for you as an artist group Sedition is.
Oh, someone's flying somewhere.
I'm sorry, I'm sitting at the airport here, but I was wondering in respect, because often as an artist you work with galleries and other stakeholders, so just want to understand a bit how much, I mean, of course it's maybe the wrong place to say how important Sedition is, but what does Sedition give you then?
Yeah, so is this a question for me, HB?
Yeah.
So what does Sedition offer to me as an artist compared to the traditional model?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, no, perfect. Now, as Rory said, I think what's fantastic about this is the kind of democratization and the ease of display. I think that's the critical thing about Sedition. Is one thing that we can create these editions of 1,000 or 100 video artworks, which people can access and collect and enjoy. But I think the critical thing for me is the fact that there's TV apps and Apple TV apps and mobile apps, so you can actually display your works on your TV at home, or TV in your studio, or TV in your office. But some people I know have dedicated TVs for this as well. So it's like an art screen next to their traditional television. So I think the fact that there's a frame in every home that can display video artworks with this level of fidelity is really important. And as the previous guy, Michael, who asked the question about, not everybody has the wall space to display lots and lots of works. So I think that is a very strong reason. The other thing for me was something that when me and Rory were working on this, the first piece we released was Transfiguration, which I'm sure some of you all know because it's our most popular piece, but is the opportunity as a medium to play with it. And this is really a precursor to what's going on in NFTs now, which I'm sure we'll come on to at some point. But I just recall that in 2014, I think it was, we released a series of single editions, so editions of one called Citizens, based on another larger duration artwork called Walking City. And what was interesting for me was this idea of creating this idea of digital scarcity. So only one person in the world could own each of these unique editions, which were kind of a precursor to the kind of generative thing that Lava Labs have done with CryptoPunks and all these things that have derived from that since. But what was really interesting is they all sold out instantly, and it was like, oh, this is interesting. Digital scarcity and moving image artworks, that is possibly a thing. So the fact that there's a chance with Sedition to explore the platform as a medium and to subvert it and almost play a kind of game with the collectors, if you know what I mean. So that there's a kind of almost an interaction there as well. I think it's really interesting and a lot more potential there.
Yeah, it's interesting to say that. I mean, I think I collect art in various ways, and when Sedition started, there were, I think, an edition of 1,000 pieces, and I always felt like that isn't unique enough. And then, then the single pieces makes it very interesting to all the digital pieces, which is unique. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for your question, HB. And now it will be Fabio's turn. And Chris, keep that respect going. Once Fabio asks his question, you will be next one. So go ahead, Fabio. Oh, I think Fabio may have just disappeared as he was put on the spot. So I think I'm going to give Chris his chance.
Perhaps HB stole his question. So.
Maybe. Okay, Chris, your turn. And Fabio, then I'm going to make you speaker shortly also.
Okay.
Hi, hello. I'm Chris. I have a question. I think Matt already touched it briefly, but since he's making like a lot of artworks for Hyundai and other brands which are public visible, how do you see this evolving, like this digital art in public spaces, or more as a accepted art form in public spaces? And maybe I also saw your series on experimental screens. Not sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly. I think it was named differently. I think it was.
Oh, I know the one. Oh, yes, yeah. Screens of the Future.
Yeah, that one.
I think it was
I
called.
really liked.
I
really liked the R&D on that. So, or your vision on that. So, I want to know, like, what's your vision on these type of screens for the future, or how people will behave with it or interact?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So I think one thing that coincided nicely with us working in moving image and video art was the emergence of large format displays within architecture. So I guess you'd call them video walls or media walls. So traditionally you would see them in Times Square and Piccadilly Circus and all across Korea and Japan and things like that. But as the cost of those screens and the efficiency, very importantly, of those screens is reduced and the scale is increased, more and more cities and public buildings are placing these video walls on the inside and outside of their venues. And what's happened with us is we've found that a really interesting canvas to work with because of the scale, especially with figurative works that we do. You get these kind of giant sized humans walking through a city and things, which is kind of a form that anyone in the world can relate to because there's no language involved. And yeah, I basically see these screens as a kind of a canvas for us to work on. And with Hyundai and other kind of commercial brands, that we've often been collaborated with them as an artist commission. So we're almost working as artists in residence within Hyundai, in the sense that we will meet some of their engineers or scientists or designers and understand the kind of forms and innovations that they are working with, and that will inspire us and inform our artistic practice, and we will create a bespoke piece of video artwork for them and their screens. So it's a really nice sort of two-way relationship there, because I and the rest of the team are huge fans of kind of science and engineering and things like that. So it's sort of really nice to be doing these kind of collaborative, almost R&D projects with these people. In regards to Screens of the Future, this is a project we did. We're just thinking about the ubiquity of screens, in terms of screens are becoming higher resolution, they're becoming cheaper, they're now becoming more flexible. When you look at the new Samsung folding phones and things like that, it won't be long until screens don't have to be rectangular anymore. They can be circular or any form. So, as you project into the future, screens will appear on more and more surfaces, whether it's your clothing or your car or your wallpaper in your house, or on the side of buildings, or on plants, or anything like that. And as every surface can become a screen, not every screen wants to have advertising on it. What expressive video artworks can appear on these screens? So that's the kind of question we're asking ourselves, and we're continuing to explore. And as these new screen-based canvases emerge, that's what we're working with.
Thank you. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Chris. Thank you, Matt. And now it would be Fabio's turn. Hopefully now you would be able to ask your question, so you can unmute yourself.
Let's try. 1, 2, 3.
Yes,
Hi.
that's working. Hi.
Perfect. Nice to meet you, everyone, and thank you so much for this. Matt, I have 2 questions for you, kind of related. I know that Universal Everything is a remote studio. So my first question will be, how does it work? How you make it working? Is it that hard? And the second question is kind of like still around the studio, and how you balance the art practice with more commercial practice, and do you see the industry changing on that point of view?
Yeah,
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Fabio. I'll start with your last question first, while it's fresh. So, yeah, the balance between art and commerce. Well, firstly, my background is in graphic design. So I originally used to design record sleeves and direct music videos. So from that point of view, it was kind of the most artistic end of the spectrum of commercial graphic design, visualizing music. So I've kind of always had a foot in both worlds, the art world and the commercial world. In terms of projects, I'll be honest and say that it doesn't feel very different when we're creating an artistic vision for a museum or a gallery and thinking about the context and the audience and what we want to express in a pure fine art setting versus being an artist in residence and thinking about the context and the audience and the inspirational source material of working in a commercial setting, like with Apple or with Hyundai or with Zaha Hadid Architects or any of these kind of studios that we've worked with. So to me, it still feels like the same form of output. We're quite lucky in that we very rarely have to compromise on the commercial work. We're often almost collaborating with brands that have a similar sensibility or attitude or tone of voice. So our aesthetic and artistic approach fits with their voice. So what I'm saying there is we rarely need to compromise and put a Nike swoosh or an Apple logo or something on work. It's very much about the authenticity. And I think that's another thing that brands have become very sophisticated in actually becoming almost benefactors or Medici in the sense that they are funding artworks for the cultural sphere for people, the public to enjoy, and they happen to be supported by Hyundai or Apple or Nike or whoever. So there's that idea that it's not really advertising masquerading as art and it's tricking the audience. It's more about creating sort of honest, authentic pieces that are adding something new to the world but are supported by good, honourable brands, really.
I think that's actually a really apposite point, Matt. Sorry, this is Rory. In answer again to Fabio's question there, I think the landscape has changed quite a bit, or in fact, perhaps even reset back to what it was quite a bit. We grew up with this kind of inherited idea that there's a big gulf between commercial artwork versus art for art's sake. But that's a slightly spurious position, because if you go back to art history, commercial art was always commercial. I mean, Rubens, Da Vinci, pick any artist in history and go back. Those studios became famous and well known because they were constantly being commissioned by the powers and commercial entities that be to do artworks. And as Matt said, I don't think there's a particularly big divide between producing the best art for someone who's commissioning it versus producing the best art just as an idea in your own head. I mean, realistically, the process, the creation, the ambition is very much the same. And as Matt said, brands these days have very much learned that it's one thing to advertise with somebody's artwork, and another thing entirely to support, commission, and help to patronize artists to produce beautiful works and simply with your name vaguely associated, which is kind of tends to be more how it happens now.
Absolutely. No, well put, Roy. No, I totally agree there. I think it's really only in the last 150 years that there's been this idea of this pure artist who doesn't have any external influence, and that's a very good thing, and it's good for a lot of people, but it's also completely valid to be working with patrons as well, because at the end of the day, everyone needs to eat and have to be healthy and have time and headspace to create their art as well. So the second question, Fabio, so working remotely. Now, we, as a studio, we've always worked remotely way before the pandemic. So when we started in 2004, it happened kind of accidentally and organically, but I was working at a music industry design studio in Sheffield, north of England, so about 2 hours north of London. And that's where I live now. So I live in Sheffield, which is on the sort of edge of the national park, the Peak District. And I started my own studio in 2004. And at the time, the internet was becoming faster. There was iChat. I don't know if you remember that, and AOL Instant Messenger, and Skype was just emerging.
Unfortunately, I remember, so I'm quite
yeah. So
we're showing our age.
Yeah. So what happened was I started my own studio. I used to design and direct everything myself, but my skill set was limited. But the ideas I was having and wanting to make were way beyond my expertise. So I wanted to start collaborating with other animators, sound designers, architects, model makers, all sorts of people. And all I started doing was just reaching out to people that I'd seen their work online and saying, do you want to work together collaboratively? And, I'm not in London, so I'm not going to come and meet you every day. But, let's do this remotely. So a lot of these first projects we made where we were working with super smart generative programmers like Carsten Schmidt and people like that, and animators, were all done via iChat or AOL Instant Messenger. So we were doing this kind of remote working, work from home collaboration thing for a long time. And what it meant in terms of the type of work we did is, one was that the people that we worked with in collaboration didn't have to be in my hometown. They could be anywhere in the world. So some projects we had people from Japan and South America and the south of England, from Scotland, working on the same project, and the only hurdle was time zones, really. That's obviously become the norm now more than ever, but it's something we've had a lot of practice in over the years. And then the final thing on that point is, because I don't live in London, we have been very, very selective about the type of work we do, because it's not like we're just going to jump on the tube and go and meet people every time there's an opportunity. It has to be really worth going on the 2-hour train journey and spending a day away from the studio to talk face to face about projects. So that's helped us stay like super discerning and super selective as to the type of work we do. So we've been giving out a lot of advice in the past couple of years about remote working, but now it's pretty much all about importantly meeting face to face when you can or when you're allowed, to create those kind of human bonds. But it's always a balance between face to face kind of gossip, fun, laughter, drinks, scribbling ideas all over paper together, and meeting real humans, and then going away to our own individual studios, concentrating for a while, being super productive, and then regrouping face to face in real life again. And that balance, that hybrid of home working and studio working, is something we've always done, and I'm glad to see it's happening everywhere now. It means that people can live where they want to live.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Matt.
All right.
Great insight, guys. So thank you so much for the question. Thanks for the answers. And now it would be Werner's turn, so feel free to unmute yourself. By the way, before you do ask your question, I'll just quickly say that the reason I'm then removing people from speakers is not because you're not allowed to ask more questions. You're more than welcome to. It's just so I can maintain order of all the people coming in. If for people who asked previous questions, if you have new questions, you're totally allowed to request the microphone and I will be adding you. So that's just for the record. But yeah, with that being said, Werner, it's your turn.
Thank you, Vlad. Apologies for the background noise. We're all trying to dodge the tube strike out in London today, so I'm on foot. Wish I was working remotely, Matt. I just wanted to expand on what you were saying earlier, Matt, about large format displays. So I own a technology company and we work in high-end residential installations, audio-visual equipment. And we're now on our third Samsung The Wall, sort of, 300-inch installation that's being used in a residential setting as a dedicated digital art screen. And these are being put within, big art collections within homes, and playing 24/7 and showing digital visual art, including one where Transfiguration was pretty much playing in full life size. So that
Wow.
was quite interesting to do for this particular client. So just sort of wanted to echo what you were saying, in that we are actually not only seeing these screens going into, more affordable sort of commercial settings, but actually making its way into residential art collections now as well.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Yeah, especially the like you're saying at the kind of high end audio visual level, that it's really interesting to see that. And yeah, the products such as Samsung The Wall is a perfect example of that. And that's, they've obviously identified that as a desirable new form of canvas for people's homes. So
absolutely, and it does give a completely different experience within a traditional art collection, which is all static, and just having this one particular room where it is just such an interactive, completely different experience. So yeah, a wonderful sort of development in the art world, and I think it's just going to go from strength to strength as the technology becomes even cheaper. So
yeah, amazing. And I think building on that, there's something that we've been exploring and actually finishing at the moment, is this idea of creating video artworks, thinking about homes and how people live with their art, and how there's possibility with digital works that they don't have to be the same every day. So for example, in my home I have paintings on the wall or prints, and I become sort of over familiar with them over time, and they start to become invisible because I see them every day and I don't necessarily notice anything new in them. But there's something really interesting about, for example, very slow moving generative video works which evolve slowly over time, that there's something new to discover in them every day, whether it's the composition's changed, the colors changed, the speed has changed, or the subject matter has changed, or something like that. But I love that idea of being able to walk past my video art screen in my home, and I'm wondering what it's looking like today. There's that sense of ever evolving kind of surprise to it. So yeah, that's something that we're really exploring, and it relates to what you're talking about there, where you're installing large format screens in people's homes. Is how to keep it engaging forever, so you're always searching for something new in it.
Absolutely brilliant. Thank you, Matt, and yeah, love your work, and thank you, Vlad.
Thanks, Werner.
Thanks, Werner.
Thank you so much for your question. But yeah, so if there is anyone who else has questions live, just ask for the microphone. But in the meantime, let me take a quick look at some of the pre-submitted questions. Rory has been awfully silent for a while, so I think it's good to throw one question.
Rory's quite enjoying that.
But I'm going to throw one question at you, Rory, now. So, and then Matt, also, you could pick that one up. What do you think about sound art? Is that something you'd like to bring on Sedition, Rory?
Yes, very much so. Actually, in point of fact, it's already there. Very little so far, since obviously there has been a predisposition to look at the visual arts in one form or another. But there are one or two sound pieces on there. There's a lady called Emily Burridge, who's a cellist, and she has some sound pieces on there. She collaborates with an artist called Philip Klimo. In actual fact, there is the facility to hire Philip and some of his visual works in partnership with sort of a quartet and a performance piece that goes with those works via Emily and Philip and those people on the site. So both performance art and sound art exist on the site at the moment, but not in any great depth. It's something I'd like to flesh out. Ultimately, yes, we are committed to displaying the very best of the landscape of contemporary art. So that should include sound art, it should include generative art and performance art and every other sort of sphere that you can reasonably put onto the platform.
Right, great. So next question, let me throw this question then to Matt. Okay. This question is probably going to be an endless one, but what does your art mean to you? What does your art mean to you? It's a difficult one, but I think everyone would love to hear the reflections.
That's open-ended.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, it's always the search for something that I've never seen before, never felt before. And I think by the fact that we work with emerging technology and we write our own code and we're really kind of pushing the technology visually, and just to mention the sound as well, very important, because my brother is our sound designer, composer. So Simon Pyke, my brother, is a sound artist and composer in his own right. But what my art means to me is just this sense of sort of seeking, I guess, epiphanies, where we're playing with software, we're breaking software, and then there's certain moments where something emerges that feels so surprising and uncharted to me that's when we save that and develop it into an artwork. So to me, it's always about the search for something I've never seen before. In terms of the figurative side of what we do, I think for me, it's this idea of perception and how there's this like age old, since the birth of man, kind of sense in humans that they can sense living movement. And it comes from really the perception of life in forests, from hunting, so you're searching for a deer or you're running away from a tiger, but you can perceive the movement of animals and humans in very abstract form, and I think that's something that we tap into with the type of work we do now with the moving image figures and things, is this idea of, like, we call it like soulfulness. If you can have these extremely abstract forms that still have a smallest sense of human soul, that's where the emotion comes through, and it becomes less about technology art and more about using technology as a kind of paintbrush.
Actually, if I can add something to that, I started working with Universal, really discovering their work. As an ex-dancer, it was actually one of the things that really led me to looking at Matt's work and being one of the first pieces I bought myself from our website. The reason being is that they'd done lots of these collaborations or events where they were essentially using, as Matt was saying, technology to really capture the essence of humanity. And it was that, more than anything else, that really appealed to me. When I sat down with Matt in Notting Hill in London many years ago, Matt described the work he was looking at, which was Transfiguration, and then later the Presence series, as an attempt or an exploration into how far you can abstract the human form, but still recognizably feel that there's a human soul within it. And I thought, A, those works captured that absolutely perfectly, and B, the idea of that was endlessly fascinating to me. So thanks, Matt, and that's exactly what I liked about those as well.
Yeah, great.
Very fascinating to hear the insights. Very fascinating. And now we have one more person asking for a microphone live. So Attore Rossi. So feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question now. Let's me. Attore Rossi calling for you. Yes, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, Attore Rossi.
Hi.
Yeah, hi, you can ask your question. Do you have any questions? All right, I would presume that no, but if you come up with questions later, then feel free to throw them. All right, so next one I'm going to ask to Rory. Is there any kind of art you don't want featured on Sedition?
Yes, bad art. No, to be honest, we tend to attempt to provide a certain standard anyway. The curatorial team, certainly for the curated platform, is an invitation-only space, so they do try to make sure that there's a certain amount of guidance for newcomers in that area. But as I've said before, what we're really committed to doing is showing the landscape of contemporary art and then allowing the audience to pick and to choose what speaks to them. We don't try to be too prescriptive about this, so it's really about a certain degree of curation and quality control. And then, in the same way that the artist and Matt was mentioning several times, this idea of a search or an interrogation, a continual look for something that's new, something that's exciting, something that engages them. Well, actually, for us as a platform, that's very much the same process when it comes to the artists. We're constantly searching through galleries and museums and exhibitions and auction houses, as well as online sites, NFT platforms, Instagram, Facebook, and there's a wider range of sort of different portals where you can find art and artists than there has ever been before. And for me, that's probably the most enjoyable and rewarding part of our job, is that search for new material, new excitement, new emotional experiences from the art and the artists we have on the platform. But no, there's not really a type of art, or certainly not any one kind or branch or movement of art that I don't want to have. No.
Right. Thank you. Next question I'd like to ask Matt. So could you please tell us about your recent accomplishments, maybe about your latest work, and also feel free to reflect on the inspirations of the latest work you've done?
Yeah, sure. Okay. So I would start with the latest work we've done, which is of significance, was a new piece which relates to the question Werner had about which we were talking about, this ever-evolving video artwork. So what we have released recently is a live real-time video piece that changes forever called Infinity, and it's using bespoke code that I worked with to create with a Unity developer called Adam Samson, and it's essentially an infinite procession of colorful, hairy, furry humans that are walking in procession across the screen, and no single one is the same. Every single one is unique, and it runs forever. So you're sat watching this piece, and you're constantly wondering who is walking onto the stage next. So there's this really interesting quality to it where you're kind of addicted to watching it, although it's relatively banal in the sense that it's like watching commuters walk past in a train station or something. But the fascination with wondering what is coming next is really interesting. So that's a generative piece called Infinity, and it's currently showing at ZKM Karlsruhe in Germany, which is a really significant and academically strong kind of digital art museum and space. And it's soon to be shown in Seoul as well, as an installation across a very wide video screen in a gallery space which is adjacent to one of the subway stations in Seoul, South Korea. So that's one of the newest things we've been working on. And then in relation to that, we're doing a few public video commissions in South Korea at the moment, which is a very vibrant audience for us, because the city, Seoul especially, is amazing in terms of the appetite for media art over there. And then beyond that, we're in discussions about putting together a big solo show in a very vast space in central London later this year, probably in sort of late summer, autumn time. And then two more things. One is we've started making quite a few augmented reality artworks. Now we're trying to go beyond just placing a kind of floating sculpture in a space that you can observe and look around, but actually creating interactive augmented reality artworks. So using generally for the newer iPhones, which have what's called a LiDAR camera, which can sense the depth of a room, but it allows you to draw kind of Universal Everything sculptures around your space, and they evolve and adapt in a chameleon-like way to your space, in terms of they adapt the colors of your space and the colors of your clothing and things like that. So we've been working on a lot of augmented reality pieces, and that, going forward into the future and what's happening with augmented reality, it's a really, really interesting area for bringing both digital artworks into your home, but also into your environment as well, and into the entire world. So it's a really exciting layer to be working with. So a lot of that coming soon. And then finally, there's a a new studio we've started, a bit like the way an artist like Olafur Eliasson has multiple studios. He's an artistic practice, his architectural practice. I think he's even got a restaurant now, possibly. But we have a studio called Everyone Forever, which is a kind of a sister studio to Universal Everything, which is working with hospitals on a few commissions. So there's one for the Children's Hospital in Sheffield that will be announced soon, which is a combination of a video piece which is related to donations to the hospital. So it's sort of fundraising and video artwork combined. And then we're collaborating also on another research piece with a surgeon who is also very interested in art, especially sculpture, and it's around the idea of how people will visualize their pain symptoms in a more three-dimensional image-based way. So some really interesting things coming out of that as well. So yeah, really busy, but a mixture of collaborations with brands and institutions and our own artworks for exhibitions coming up.
Well, busy is good. So super exciting, super inspiring to hear about the projects that are going on. And now, Attore Rossi has again asked for a microphone. So do you have a question for us? Would you like to ask something? Hello? Anything you'd like to ask us? All right, I will assume that not at the moment. I will leave you as a speaker in case you change your mind, but I will continue with the pre-submitted questions and throw next one to Rory. So Rory, would you be able to recap our NFT plans? As, for example, one of the comments was, always loved Sedition, you're the original digital art. When will you move to NFT? So would you be able to tell a bit about how planning and how it's all going?
Of course. For anyone that missed it, we actually had a Twitter session, AMA, a couple of weeks ago, which was very much on just that subject. So there's a lot of our thoughts and our plans are already out there for that. But to recap, we're very aware and have been looking at the NFT situation for some time. We're also very aware that we were one of the original people in the digital art space. It's not an accident that we have not yet moved into NFTs. This is a very deliberate choice on our part, and it's driven very much by ideological concerns and exactly how we want to do it. For example, one of our key concerns is the ecological impact of NFTs. Now, there's a lot of crazy talk flying around this and some very wild ideas on what the real energy impact is. I think, truthfully, no one seems to know ideally what the truth is. But it is clear that it's not good. And we don't want to be a part of that problem. As one of the biggest platforms for digital art that exists out there, there's more than 1 million artworks on Sedition. If we were to add all of those to the blockchain and do NFTs, without it being an eco-friendly setup, then that could be disastrous. So obviously we have concerns about this. There are also other concerns that we had, which was that, in our view, the rise of NFTs is a great thing, and blockchain is a brilliant technology. It isn't quite doing what we hoped it would for the art world as yet. There's an awful lot of very poor quality, mixed mashed, almost anything can be an NFT. And we have no objection to that, but we want to do it differently. Sedition is going to keep the art and the artist front and center. The curatorial approach that we've always had will remain in place. If you're buying an artwork, whether as an NFT or anything else from Sedition, you'll still have the ability to use and enjoy it as an artwork. It shouldn't just be something that you're trading on an exchange. It should be viewed and enjoyed, and there's an emotional reaction concerned. The fact that you can then swap it for more or less than you paid for it is kind of a side effect, in our view, really. So that's one of the reasons we're doing this. We have now started to make plans to throw our hat into the ring using Ether as the underpinning for blockchain. And this is on the back of their statement about the move from proof of work to proof of stake. Now, we are well aware as a company that move has been mooted for some time and is still in the offing and not happening as yet. But it does look as though that is going to be the case. So our plans at the moment are to shift towards allowing a blockchain identification or blockchain ledger, if you will, for the ownership and provenance of our artworks. But until such time as proof of work is definitely working as proof of stake, we'll be making very, very limited use of this. We're essentially holding back to make sure that the impact and the eco situation is what we want it to be. On the other side of it, we think it's a brilliant technology. In terms of it being more secure, having the ownership and the provenance and all the data on a decentralized system rather than a centralized system, this is brilliant, far more trustworthy, far more robust, far more secure. The technology allows for a fair resale value for artists and their work anytime that work gets resold in the secondary market in the future. This is brilliant, what we've always wanted for Sedition. So there's several things there that make it very, very attractive for us as a technology to pivot towards. But there are several points there that give us pause and that we have concerns about. So we are still taking our time to make sure we get it right.
Yeah.
And Matt, would you like to also answer this question? What are your thoughts of NFTs, the future of digital art? And actually, one question that was specifically submitted was, what do you think about all these new galleries for NFTs? So, Matt, what's your thoughts here?
Yeah, firstly, as Rory said, I think the underlying sort of architecture and structure is fantastic. I think for me, you know, obviously we've been looking at creating digital only works for years now, and including digital scarcity, so it's the perfect medium for us to explore, and we have done already. But yeah, I think one of the key things is the secondary market, in the way that when artists sell their work, that they get a percentage of the secondary or even tertiary sales of the work for the rest of their lives, which is something that doesn't exist generally in the traditional art world, when struggling painters sell their paintings at their degree show and then they don't see a cent years later when the value's inflated. So I think from that sense, it's very good for the original creators. And yeah, our background and our involvement in NFTs is much like Rory's viewpoint, in the sense that, you know, as a studio, we're doing a lot of projects with which are kind of more ethically sound, and being very selective about the type of work we do going into the future. And recently, where we're, you know, doing work with electric car companies and hospitals and green energy, hydrogen energy companies and things like that. And I think that's a really interesting area to be exploring in as artists as well. So our entry into NFTs was really brought about by what Joni LeMercier and Memo Acton highlighted with the initial kind of data visualization of the environmental impact and the sheer energy use of traditional proof of work blockchains like Ethereum, and how, despite, you know, we dipped our toe in very early on and did one piece on Super Air, but soon after that we learned more about the impact and the energy usage of platforms such as that. So we made a commitment to solely focus over the last year or so on Tezos blockchain. So we were invited via Joni and Memo to be part of Hikek Nunc, which is since closed, but has evolved into other kind of mirror websites, which was a really interesting vibe to the whole NFT gallery there, because it was a lot of art for artists, and a lot of the really respectable digital creators were on there. So it felt like being involved in an underground record label in a way. So we were making video art and with sound NFTs for Hikek Nunc on the Tezos blockchain, which are now also available on Object, which is a new kind of front end for the Tezos NFTs. So yeah, from that point of view, we publicly committed to only be publishing NFTs, minting NFTs on kind of proof of stake based blockchains. So as Rory says, when Ethereum 2 comes along eventually, it's been rumored for a while, but it's happening soon, then that will be good for everybody.
I'm not sure I understand.
Oh, that's my watch. Apple Watch talking to me there. Sorry.
Your watch doesn't understand.
No, it doesn't understand what the hell I'm on about, does it? So that's our commitment: is clean NFTs all the way, and it's a really, really good, vibrant community, and I love the fact that there's plenty of super good artists who are prepared to not go down the lucrative route of the kind of proof of work Ethereum route, and they can make a lot more money that way, but they're sticking with their kind of values and sticking with things like Tezos to create good work with a lower environmental impact.
Great discussion, and thank you guys very much for offering the insights and what the thoughts are on the NFTs and the impacts, etc. Gonna throw the next one to Rory. So would you tell us a bit about ArtStream? What about this product makes it unique, and why should people get it?
Okay, what about it makes it unique? Well, actually, in all honesty, I'm not sure it is unique, although I don't know of a like-for-like comparable that I would genuinely say is of a similar level. Why would people like it? Simply put, it is the ultimate manifestation of my vision of removing the barriers to enjoying the best of contemporary art. It is virtually no cost at all. The idea of ArtStream is to make it an incredibly minimal cost for the end user, but to make it popular enough that the artists are still very well rewarded for their work and their effort. So this is aimed very squarely at what we at Sedition call the Spotify generation. We know from the surveys of our own audience and our own users that there's a very large demographic out there, a large and growing demographic that wants to be able to access the artworks and enjoy the creative output on the site, but don't have very deep pockets and can't afford to buy and collect very heavily. These are the people that ArtStream is aimed at. The idea is that you pay a minimal sum every month and you have access to everything. We still wanted to make sure that we underpinned the scarcity model and the collecting model. So the way it works right now is the basic subscription model will only allow you to have those works on subscription for as long as those works are available for sale. If it sells out on the site, it's removed from subscription. So if there's a work you really love, or it has the key piece in your collection and you want to keep it in perpetuity, you're going to have to buy a copy. That said, being a subscriber gives you a 10% discount on any purchases made on the site. So there is an incentive to buy and build the collection that way as well. But you're not obliged to. You can have endless playlists that last for 5 minutes, 3 hours, 24 hours, every work on the site if you want there. And the point is you can keep that variation. Like Matt was saying, a screen on your wall, if you wanted, you can have a playlist on there that has a different work coming up every single time. There's enough works on the site that you wouldn't need to cycle through everything more than once a week, I think. So really that's what ArtStream is about. It's about making sure that we offer the widest possible access to the best possible array of contemporary art at the lowest possible barrier to entry. It's those 3 points wrapped up in one.
Excellent. And next, Matt, question I have for you. Are we to expect any new launches on Sedition anytime soon? Any Universal Everything launches on Sedition?
Bear in mind, we have Matt tied in a chair with...
No, of course. Yeah, it's something me and Rory have talked about a lot. Obviously, we've got many different artworks in production, and I'm always mindful of, how to create either bespoke artworks that are ideal for the Sedition platform, or how to create adaptations of let's say larger scale artworks that could work on Sedition as well. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah, more things coming. I think the thing that I would really like to explore more is this idea of these sort of unique editions. I think that's something that is a really, obviously, evidently a really interesting sweet spot with NFTs, but to do that in a different format would be really interesting. And also when the technology allows the idea that when you buy a video artwork, it changes every day. So it's not the same video loop every day. It's you watch it in your vault on your screen at home, and there's something generative or evolving about it as well. I think there's a lot of potential there.
Absolutely.
Right. Actually, following up on the last topic about what the technology, where the technology is going, what it's going to allow, I'd like to throw this question to you both. What are your thoughts on the technological developments? Where is the future going? How are we going to be able to enjoy digital art going forward? I think that's a question that's relevant for everyone listening.
Shall I go first, Rory, or do you want to go?
No, please do.
All right, okay. So what is next? Well, as I've said earlier, there's new forms of screen-based canvases that are emerging. So, it may be clothing or furniture or cars or buildings or even in nature, scarily. So that's really interesting in terms of the number of canvases that are starting to emerge that can be covered in displays in a positive way. In terms of what we're working on, I think we're really interested in how new forms of technology such as artificial intelligence and AI within body tracking, tracking human movement and things, is really interesting in the sense that you can even extract human movement from a video now. A YouTube video or something we filmed ourselves. We don't have to go into a complex motion capture studio and use performers with infrared sensors and markers on their bodies. We can extract the full movement from that. So that kind of thing is really interesting. The other thing I'm sure some of you may have seen is the sort of fidelity of believable human synthetic graphics now. So Unreal Engine, a big sort of game engine, real-time graphics, has released something called MetaHumans, where they're uncannily real humans that you can customize the appearance of, and they can synchronize to your face tracking and lip syncing and things like that. So in terms of Hollywood and computer games and digital art, the potential for almost photoreal, believable human forms is fascinating. So there's an awful lot of potential for those things. Personally, for me, I think what we're wanting to do next is, I think there's something really interesting about creating live, evolving pieces of video art, but that also have a level of informativeness as well. So let's think about that as data art, so data visualization art, where we might have a generative real-time crowd of people in a mass choreography on a screen, but they might be visualizing some real-time data of something that's happening in society or in the world. Or a walking figure that we create might be the appearance of their body transformation might be related to, again, some real-time data. So things like that are really interesting, where you have this sense of change and flux, but it's rooted in some vital information. So it can be informative and helpful as well as beautiful.
Thanks, Matt. Ultimately, I think I'm largely in agreement with everything you're saying there. I think the technological developments, well, one question is, will it make the life of the artist easier? And that's kind of how long is a piece of string. I suspect in some cases it certainly will. In many ways, an artist's life is much easier today. The route to market has never been simpler or less cluttered than it was before. There's an enormous ubiquity of screens and digital media around the world, as well as lots of new technology, the wallpaper screens, holograms, biosensors, and all the things that Matt is talking about there. So there's an awful lot more there to do and a lot more choice for the artists. But at the same time, there is, I think, a danger of the artist getting crowded out. It is so much easier for so many people to pick up the tools and engage with this that I think it's harder to stand out perhaps than it was before. I'm also very curious to see what the developments are in things like AI and this kind of this side of the market. For me, art with a genuine human interest is almost inevitably going to be derived from a human artist. But that's very much a personal thing, and I'm not sure that everyone else agrees with me. So I'm quite keen to see how that develops and what that will do to the landscape as a whole. overall, I think more and more what's going to make the artist's life a lot easier actually are people like us. More and more now, sites like Sedition and the context and positional aspects and curatorial help that we offer there, I think are going to make an enormous amount of difference, given the flood of additional data, material, people and artists within the landscape.
Yeah.
Great, thanks for the reflections, guys. And now, as we're about to move on to the final questions, I'd just like to remind the audience one more time that if you have any questions for Matt or for Rory, feel free to request the microphone and ask your questions, because we want to have this interactive. Next question will actually throw back to Rory. How long has Sedition been working with Universal Everything?
I have to check my records, but I think we launched Transfiguration as the first piece on the site back in 2013. Matt, is that right?
Yeah, that sounds about right. I'd say so.
Sedition opened up at the back end of 2011, so really beginning of 2012. So about a year after our commencement, we had launched Matt's Universal Everything on the site. In fact, it was in January 2013. I'm looking at my screen now.
Yeah.
Very nice, very cool.
Mm-hmm.
And Matt, do you have any exhibitions coming up in the very near future?
Yeah, so there's on now there's a piece, the Infinity piece is showing in a group exhibition called Biomedian in ZKM, which is a large media art museum in Karlsruhe in Germany. So that's on now. We're in discussions to do a large solo show in London, a venue that I can't reveal yet, but that will be super exciting. But that would be a lot of our figurative work and some new pieces in that kind of huge life-size scale. And then beyond that, I think we might be doing a small show in Paris soon. So there's a few things coming up, definitely. And then finally, in South Korea, I'm trying to think, there's a few pieces there. There's Hyundai do these really interesting kind of cultural centers called Motor Studio, which are a mixture of design store, bookstore, library, cafe, with large video wall spaces. And we're doing a few new commissions for those at the moment as well, actually, one of which is to do with ocean plastic and how that is extracted from the ocean and recycled into car parts now. So that's a really interesting kind of theme for a show over there. So that will be coming out probably the middle of this year.
Very interesting indeed. And Rory, then the question goes to you. So what about Sedition? What shall we expect from Sedition going forward?
Okay, well, we're actually going to be stepping into a number of physical shows ourselves. We had teed up a touring group show exhibition of Sedition artworks, which was supposed to be starting in China and going around on a big tour. That was just prior to the pandemic hitting us and everything got shut down. But now these venues are opening back up. People are able to gather and a little bit less concerned about the restrictions of COVID. So these will be taking place again. We'll make announcements about them as they go. For other events, these are not exhibitions, but we'll be doing a couple of NFT events this year to announce and give more information about our entry into that sphere. We'll be doing the NFT event in Paris in April and one in Singapore in the summer. And on top of that, of course, there will then be looking to inaugurate our gallery spaces and our physical exhibitions. We have a big space on Potsdamer Straße in Berlin. And again, prior to the pandemic, we were planning on doing some big group shows and some monograph shows for Sedition in that space. All of that will now start to come back online now that we're able to gather together again. By the way, Matt, please make sure you send us details of any of the shows and events you're doing. We'll add them to the newsletter and make sure that the audience get told. Yeah.
Of course, yeah. Pleasure.
Fantastic.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Would you like to have a chance to say your closing words, some closing remarks?
Yeah, well, for me, yeah, thank you very much. This is a great format. I think we should do more of this. It's good to see you all here, and appreciate your support of our work and our artistic practice. Thank you.
And likewise for me, it's a real pleasure to see everyone here. Thank you so much for making the time to join us. On a slightly related note, whilst I have a few listeners here, we will be sending out some information about this. But obviously, with everything that's going on in the world at the moment, most of us have our attention divided, and it's a horrible situation to be aware of. We actually had an artist on the site to reach out to us. He's a Ukrainian artist, and he simply asked if it would be possible to get a bit of extra support. Possibly we could expedite his quarterly invoice and pay it sooner. Obviously, I'm very happy to do that. Actually looking at his work on the site, we love it. The curatorial team thought it was great, and so actually we're going to launch him onto the curated platform later this week. Very much with a view to supporting him and his work, but he does deserve to be there. It's great work. It's an interesting artist, and we're going to try and support the launch. And I'd love it if you guys could take a look, and if you like it, then please add your support to the whole thing. Sedition will not be taking any money from this. The proceeds will go directly to the artist, and Sedition's share will be donated to the Red Cross and other charities operating in Ukraine. So there's no benefit for Sedition in this. This is purely a support function for the artists and for the people in Ukraine. Anyway, thank you very much for joining us, and I hope we'll see you again. Matt, you're absolutely right. This is a brilliant forum, and thank you very much for your time. That was fascinating for me, and I'm sure it was for our audience as well.
Oh.
Yes, thank you very much, Rory. Thank you very much, Matt. Thank you very much, everyone who joined today. And please follow us on Twitter. Please stay tuned, as we will be doing more of this in the future.
Excellent.
Right?
Thanks
again, guys.
Cool.
See you then.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.